Having gone through some fairly detailed and mind-bending stuff around Spinoza, I wanted to give an overview of what this is all about, because it's easy to get lost in the details, to not see the wood for the trees, and so it's worthwhile having some overall idea of what we're trying to achieve with all of this. And I'm certainly under no illusion that this kind of thing is only going to be of interest to a very small number of people. Most people will basically just flit around from one idea to the next, from one little bit of titillation to the next one. So anyway, an overview would be, I think, useful. So you can see from the title that the aim of all of this is liberation. Well, liberation from what? Because most people seem to think that liberation is liberation from maybe difficult circumstances, liberation from their ordinary state of being. It's not really that. There's only one thing you need to be liberated from, and that is yourself. I remember having a conversation with Rena Hans, this lady who knew Gurdjieff, many years ago now. And I told her that I wanted to be liberated from myself. And she looked at me and smiled. I'll never forget that smile. I knew I'd hit the nail on the head when I said that. And Rena would never ever basically lay out what I'm doing here, a roadmap. She always used to say, your search and your journey is yours, it's not anybody else's. You do it in the way you need to do it. Pick up bits useful and then move on. Anyway, so we need to be liberated from ourselves. What is this self exactly? Well, self is a myth. Self is basically identification with a dominant set of ideas and emotional states. And because it's a fixed thing, so for example, I've mentioned this before, but I'm a fairly impatient person. That impatience used to make me so unhappy, because of course nothing is going to go at the pace that I wanted to go at. I want to go to the checkout and there'd be nobody there. I want to go to the car hire and there not be a queue. I want to go into the shops, get what I want and get out. But my wife doesn't do shopping like that. So anyway, it's a cause of constant problems for me. So this self, which is a fixed thing, it's kind of ironical, isn't it, that people read Gurdjieff and they read about him when he's saying, well, we are like a mixture of stuff in a glass jar. It's all loose and all the bits move around and there's nothing fixed. Well, you don't want anything fixed. And he went on to say, through this work you can effectively weld it all together and create a permanent I. I'll have something more to say about that in a moment. Anyway, because the self is a fixed thing, because your attitudes, your ideas, your emotions, all of which are utterly and totally meaningless and irrelevant, because of these things you bump up against the world all the time, because the world has no account of your fixed ideas, your fixed emotional states, your fixed attitudes. The world is just a free-moving thing. It's very large, much larger than you. So you're going to be in trouble most of the time, because it's not going to behave how you want it to behave. Now, I mentioned that people see liberation as some kind of state of freedom. And in a way it is, but there's a very, very good book called Zen and the Psychology of Transformation by a guy called Hubert Benoit. He actually worked with Gurdjieff for a while. I think he was a psychoanalyst. And he disliked Gurdjieff's practice. He thought it was going in probably pretty much the wrong direction. And interestingly enough, a lot of the people who knew Gurdjieff kind of think that as well. But I won't dwell on that. Anyway, in his book, he says, or there is a chapter that is titled Liberation as Total Determinism. I couldn't have put it better myself. In fact, I put a little thing on Facebook a few days ago which said that something to the effect of liberation or freedom is the realization that you are a total slave. The only thing you need to be free of is not the rest of the universe, it's yourself. The rest of the universe is doing fine, thank you very much, and it will go the way that it goes. You are the problem, because within you are fixed ideas, fixed emotional states, fixed attitudes. And I did a podcast, probably over a year ago now, called Insanity is a Fixed Idea. I think Gurdjieff actually said that. So the task at hand is to somehow become free of ourselves. What does that mean? Where does it take us? Well, Jesus said very explicitly, I think this is John 3:3, he said, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven." Well, to be born again means that something has to die. What is the thing that has to die? Well, the thing that has to die is you as a self. And what is the kingdom of heaven? Well, the kingdom of heaven is everything. It's the infinite and the eternal. And in reality, we are locked into or part of this huge causal nexus. We are things that are caused. We are not self-created. We don't cause, we are caused. We have emerged out of the universe and we will go back into it. So we are caused things. So if you are a caused thing, then it would make sense that you are inwardly free enough to accept what is happening, to be part of the whole, and to accept how the whole has determined what will happen to you. Resistance is always futile. To resist what is happening to you is simply to cause problems for yourself. It not only causes suffering, but it also makes you more rigid inside. There's a very nice saying in the Tao Te Ching where Lao Tzu says something to the effect of, we should be like willows that bend in the wind. We don't resist it, we just bend with it. All of this sounds easy. It is not easy. This is the most difficult thing a human being can undertake. And Spinoza goes on to say in part 5 of his Ethics, a man who understands himself and his emotions loves God. Well, why does he love God? And let's remember that God isn't the man in the sky with a beard. God is the infinite power behind existence, the infinity of existence. Why would we love that? Because a man who understands himself and his emotions has actually become free of them, to a large extent anyway. And he has the ability to see that he is part of a whole causal nexus. In fact, in the improvement of the understanding, Spinoza says that his aim in all of this was to realize and to show that our mind is part of the mind of the whole of nature. We are not separate things. What you are thinking, what you are feeling are determined. You are an effect. I can't emphasize that enough. So what does this mean in terms of doing stuff? Well, it means quite a lot. So the morning practice, which is outlined in the Heart of Practice document, is an absolute must. You have to do it. You have to do it because normally we are totally identified with the stream of stuff that goes on in our heads, our imagination. To be out of your imagination for 10 or 20 minutes and in your body develops a sensitivity to the body. Also, you might experience some emotional states that are not wholly familiar. And it creates a muscle to be able to pull yourself out of your imagination when required and into your body, into the reality of your existence. So, the morning practice, absolutely necessary. This is hard work. And actually, speaking personally, I have an online business which has nothing to do with this. It's concerned with artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I think, well, I'm pumping this stuff out there. There's 180 podcasts, I think, or thereabouts. And then I think, well, actually, if just one or two people really get the gist of this, then it's all been worth it. There's about 3,000 people following. Out of that, I imagine there are 20 or 30, probably the people on Patreon, who see the real worth of it. Most of the people are entertained for 20 minutes, and then they'll move on to the next podcast or video. Nothing wrong with that, it's just that, obviously, that's all they will ever do all their lives, looking for some easy answer. There are no easy answers. This is hard work. The hardest thing you will ever do. So here's the deal. The morning practice, which I've mentioned. You need to establish within yourself what I call a pleasure and pain radar. You need to sort of switch this radar on several times a day, if you can remember to do it. Normally we are totally absorbed in life. Life takes us. So to have the presence of mind when we're excited or when we're angry or impatient or whatever it is, to have that presence of mind just to look at our bodily state and what is going on in our mind and our emotional state, which is in the body, and just say, oh, yeah, I'm feeling angry. Why is this come about? Oh, it's come about because that guy has just pushed in front of me in the queue. He's actually diminished my power because I don't want to be in this queue. So I've now got to wait longer, and he's imposed his will on mine, so I feel diminished, so I'm angry. That kind of thing needs to go on all day, every day, or as often as you can do it. The reality is that 99% of your day will go to hell. You'll just be the usual rubbish of life. But if you can pull out 1%, 1% would be a big deal, where you are simply observing your emotional state and your thoughts without judgment. I'll get onto that in a minute. Anyway, without judgment. And just see it as, almost like a machine. Well, this has happened and that's happened. Oh yeah, and this is the reason I'm feeling like this. Yeah, it's just, a machine in operation. God just said man is a machine. And he also says something else that was very important. He said, a machine that knows it is a machine is no longer a machine. He doesn't say that we have to stop trying to, we have to try not to be a machine. He's saying, just know that you're a machine. See how the machine operates. And in that understanding, you will start to gain some freedom from your emotional states. Now, I mentioned non-judgment. Non-judgment is the absolute key to all of this, because where does that judgment come from? It comes from your conditioning. So, today I had an occasion where I was, as usual, feeling fairly impatient. And even after doing this for many years, I still get caught. And I was observing the state, and I could hear the little voice in the back of my mind, you shouldn't be impatient, you shouldn't be impatient. Yeah. Bullshit. Nothing wrong with being impatient. There's something very wrong with judging it. Just be impatient, sense the state, my Kanatas is being thwarted, my will to life is being thwarted because things are not happening in the way I want them to. Just observe it, and observe the thoughts that are going along with it. And happily I caught that little thought in my mind going on saying, oh, you shouldn't be impatient. Nothing wrong with being impatient, nothing wrong with being angry, nothing wrong with being hateful, nothing wrong with being envious, nothing wrong with derision, nothing wrong with regret, nothing wrong with grief, nothing wrong. This is just the machine reacting to the environment in the way that it reacts. So, I will summarize these as I go through them. So the morning practice, and then the pleasure and pain radar. You just need to switch it on several times a day. Just feel what's going on within you. Non-judgment. The minute you judge, you're caught. You are trapped in it, because the judgment will actually feed the emotion. It's a good idea to keep some kind of a journal, because in a year from now, if you're still doing this kind of thing, you may look back at it and think, oh shit, yeah, I was always feeling shameful. I was always feeling like I'd done something wrong, like I should be shamed. And you might look back at that and think, well, I can sort of see that now, and I'm not so tied into it. And then finally, you need to study. These podcasts can give you something. But the reality is that you need to study and struggle with Spinoza particularly, the Stoics, possibly Kant if we ever get onto that. The struggling is useful for several reasons. One is, you will come to your own understanding of all of this. And that's the important thing. My understanding of this is not your understanding of it. I got help in the early days with it, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. But in reality, you need to come to your own understanding. You need to make it yours. And you'll find your own particular way of doing that. And the only way you can do that is by struggling with something like Spinoza. Spinoza is difficult for a very specific reason. He knew that effort, active effort, is the thing that builds an internal muscle, and is a thing that makes sure that when we do see something, it's really important, that it's an event, rather than just, oh, this is what you need to do, blah, 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 end of book. And then you move on to another one. So, to summarize all of that, the aim of all of this is liberation, to be liberated from yourself. That is a major undertaking, and I don't know whether I would advise it or not. All I know is what somebody once said to me. I was once involved for several years with a Zen group in California, And the guy who ran the group was a very, very sweet man. I loved him dearly, a man called Robert. He said to me one day, he said, once this process has started in someone, there is nothing in the universe can stop it. So, and they used to say in the Gurdjieff work, once you've started on this path, there's no looking back. So I do feel slightly responsible. You know, you need to think hard about whether you want to do all this kind of stuff. The morning practice, the constant or as much as you can monitoring of the emotions and the emotional state and the thoughts, keeping a journal, struggling with something like Spinoza. It's all hard work, but the result of it all is priceless, beyond measure. And the truth is, there are people who cannot help but do this work. There's just something in them that makes them do it. You know, that's not a cause for praise. It's just the way they are. It's a blessing, in truth. And I'll finish on what Spinoza said. All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare.